I never thought I'd be one of those guys sharing their life story online, especially not about something like this. But here I am, because, honestly, I don't want anyone else to end up in the same twisted mess I did. My name's Jack. I'm 35 years old, and I've been married to Emma for 10 years. A whole decade with this woman. We met back in college, seems like a lifetime ago now. She was something else back then, a real spark of energy. She could walk into any room, and it'd feel like the whole place lit up just because she was there. I was just the lucky guy standing by her side, grinning like an idiot because I couldn't believe someone like her even looked my way. Things were good between us, or at least that's what I thought. Our friends would always tell us we were the perfect couple. Hell, even I bought into that image for a long time. We had what I thought was a solid marriage, shared jokes, some wild nights out, and a few quiet ones at home. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? You build a life together, go through the motions, and figure you'll stick it out because you've made it this far. But man, I should have seen the cracks long before they split wide open. It wasn't like one day she just up and changed. No, it was more subtle than that. Looking back now, I can see the signs that I chose to ignore, those little moments when you feel something's off, but you brush it aside, convincing yourself it's nothing. I think part of me just didn't want to admit it. I mean, we'd been together for 10 years. That's not something you throw away on a whim, right? The first thing that started to feel off was her work schedule. Emma had always worked long hours, but lately, she was coming home even later than usual. I'd ask her about it, and she'd give me the usual excuses. Oh, just another late-night meeting, or David and I are working on a project, and it's running long. David. That name makes me want to punch a wall now, but back then, I didn't think anything of it. He was just some guy she worked with, or so I thought. At first, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But it started happening more and more often. She'd come home late, sometimes well past midnight, and she'd be distant, like her mind was somewhere else, anywhere but with me. We'd barely talk, and when we did, the conversations were shallow. Nothing of substance, just the usual, "How was your day?" kind of crap. And when it came to intimacy, well, that was practically non-existent. It was like we were living as roommates, not as a married couple. We'd sleep in the same bed, but there was this invisible wall between us, and I couldn't figure out why. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Maybe work was stressing her out. Maybe I wasn't doing enough. You can really drive yourself crazy with all the maybes. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to admit it. And then came the day that everything changed. It was a regular afternoon, nothing special. I was working from home, trying to organize some files on our shared laptop, something we both used for work. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I wasn't even thinking about it. But as I was going through some folders, I stumbled upon an email. The subject line wasn't anything suspicious, just some work-related bullshit. But something made me open it, and when I did, it was like a punch to the gut. The email was from David, her colleague. But it wasn't about work. Oh no, it was far from that. The contents were explicit, to say the least. Romantic, sure, but mostly sexual. The kind of stuff you don't write to someone unless you're screwing them. I felt my blood run cold as I read line after line of his disgusting words. He wasn't just some colleague. He was the guy my wife was fucking behind my back. The worst part? She wasn't even trying to hide it. I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at the screen, my mind racing. I could feel the rage boiling inside me, but there was something else too, something darker. I wanted to hurt her. I wanted her to feel the same pain I was feeling at that moment. But I couldn't just explode. Not yet. If I was going to confront her, I needed more. I needed to know how long this had been going on, how deep it went. I couldn't just go off half-cocked with nothing but an email. So, I did what any guy with a brain full of suspicion and a heart full of betrayal would do. I decided to gather evidence. I wanted to see it all, every call, every message, every dirty little secret. I wanted the full picture, not just some half-baked confrontation where she could lie her way out of it. I installed spyware on her phone and email. I'm not proud of it, but at that point, I didn't care. Trust was already dead. If she was going to betray me, I was damn sure going to know every last detail. The program let me see everything: texts, emails, phone calls, all of it. I could even listen in on her conversations if I wanted to. It was like having a front row seat to the car crash that was my marriage. From that day on, I lived a double life. I'd act normal around her, smile, laugh, pretend everything was fine, while secretly checking the spyware every chance I got. I watched in real time as she sent messages to David, planning their next meeting. I could see the texts, the flirty emojis, the sexual innuendos. It was like watching her fall in love with someone else right in front of my eyes, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. The worst part? I had to pretend like I didn't know. I had to sit there, at the dinner table, listening to her talk about her long day at work, knowing full well she'd been with him. Every word that came out of her mouth felt like a lie, and it made me sick. But I wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning. I wasn't sharing this story for sympathy. No, I'm sharing it because I know there are guys out there, just like me, sitting on their couch, completely clueless while their wives are out there screwing someone else. Trust me, I didn't think it'd happen to me either. But it did. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Once I started monitoring Emma's phone, it didn't take long for the truth to unravel. What I found wasn't just some casual fling or a recent mistake, it was a full-blown affair that had been going on for over a year. A fucking year. Can you imagine that? 12 months of lies, deceit, and betrayal, all right under my nose. And the worst part? They were incredibly good at covering their tracks. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. They had a system, a well-oiled machine of secrecy. Through the spyware, I found out they were meeting in hotels during so-called business trips and conferences. Sometimes, they'd even fly out to different cities just to be together. And to make matters worse, they had a separate bank account to fund their little adventures. I watched as they booked flights, hotel rooms, expensive dinners, things Emma had never even mentioned to me. Not a single word. The pain of discovering all this was something I can't even begin to describe. It's like someone took a knife and twisted it in my gut, over and over again. And the fact that it had been going on for so long, that was the real kicker. I felt like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. But as much as I wanted to explode, as much as I wanted to confront her and tear her world apart, I couldn't. Not yet. We had 2 daughters, Lily and Sarah. They didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of this mess. I had to be smart. I needed time to figure out my next move. Every time I looked at Emma after that, all I could see was her betrayal. She'd try to act normal around the house, like nothing was wrong, but I could see right through her. The guilt was practically seeping out of her, and I finally understood why she'd been so cold and distant lately. Every excuse she gave, I'm just stressed from work, or I'm exhausted, it was all bullshit. She wasn't stressed from work, she was stressed because she was living a double life and trying to keep it hidden. It became clear to me that David wasn't just some fling for her. He was her way of filling some emotional void that I apparently couldn't. That realization hurt even more than the affair itself. I was being replaced, not just physically but emotionally, too. It was like I wasn't enough anymore, like the life we had built together wasn't enough. And despite her attempts to appear loving at home, I could see the cracks. I could see the guilt weighing her down, but she was too far gone to turn back. But even with all that, I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I wanted to be calculated about it. I wanted to make sure that when the time came, I had all the power in my hands. No rash decisions, no heated arguments where she could twist things around and make me look like the bad guy. No, I needed to make sure that when I struck, it would be final. In the meantime, I played the role of the oblivious husband. I kept things as normal as possible for the sake of the kids. I'd help Lily with her homework, take Sarah to soccer practice, and do all the fatherly things I had always done. I couldn't let them see the cracks in our marriage just yet. They were too young to understand the kind of storm that was brewing, and I wasn't about to let Emma's actions tear apart their world. Not until I was ready to make my move. But every day, it was getting harder to keep up the act. Every time I saw Emma on her phone, I knew she was probably texting David. Every time she worked late or went out with friends, I knew where she really was. And it killed me. I'd lie in bed next to her, knowing she had just come back from fucking another man, and I'd have to pretend like everything was fine. It wasn't just anger that was eating me alive, it was the sense of betrayal on every level. I had trusted this woman with everything. My heart, my life, my children. And in return, she was giving herself to another man. I could have confronted her right then and there, thrown everything in her face, but I didn't. I stayed silent. I needed more time. I needed to plan my revenge. And so, I waited. Watched. Bided my time. Every move Emma made, I was right there, 2 steps ahead of her, gathering more evidence, letting her dig her own grave without even realizing it. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. When the time came, she would pay for every lie, every secret, every betrayal. Once I made up my mind to play the long game, I knew I couldn't let anything slip. Emma needed to believe she was in control, that she had me fooled. So, I played my part, a loving, attentive husband who hadn't a clue what his wife was up to. It wasn't easy, but I had to make it believable. I stayed patient, gave her space when she needed it, acted like her late nights didn't bother me. I even started initiating conversations about her work, asking how her meetings were going. Every time she lied straight to my face, I smiled and nodded, but inside, it was like pouring gasoline on the fire. But I wasn't just sitting around letting her get away with it. Behind the scenes, I was putting everything into motion. First, I started moving some money into a private account. Nothing too obvious, just little amounts here and there. I wasn't about to leave myself vulnerable when the shit hit the fan. I knew I'd need a financial safety net once I pulled the trigger on the divorce. I kept gathering evidence, too. Every text, every call, every goddamn detail of her affair with David. I saved everything, screenshots, emails, even photos. I wanted to make sure that when the time came, there'd be no way for her to deny it. She wouldn't be able to twist the story or play the victim. I had the receipts, and I was going to use them. One of the smartest things I did was hire a divorce lawyer early on. I consulted with him in secret, told him everything, and he laid out the best plan of attack. It wasn't just about getting out of the marriage, it was about making sure I didn't get screwed in the process. He helped me put together a plan, and part of that plan involved timing. We decided to wait, to build the case until it was airtight, and then hit her with the divorce papers when she least expected it. But here's where things got interesting. I knew David had a wife, Rachel. I'd seen her around at school functions, PTA meetings, that kind of thing. She seemed nice enough, a bit distant, but who could blame her? She was married to a guy like David. I figured she deserved to know the truth, but I wasn't about to just drop a bomb on her out of the blue. No, I had to be more strategic than that. I needed her on my side. I started arranging playdates for our kids, Lily and Sarah with Rachel's kids, who went to the same school. At first, it was just casual. We'd chat while the kids played, nothing too deep. I wanted to earn her trust, get her comfortable around me. Slowly, I started dropping little hints here and there, subtle things, like Emma's been working a lot of late nights with David lately. Must be exhausting for them. Or, funny how work can pull people in different directions. Nothing too obvious, just enough to plant a seed of doubt in her mind. I could see the wheels turning, even though she didn't say much at first. It didn't take long before Rachel started to get suspicious. You could tell by the way she'd look at her phone when David wasn't around, or the way her smile faltered when I'd bring up work. I knew she was starting to piece things together, but she needed that final push. And that's when I gave her what she needed, proof. I showed her some of the evidence I'd gathered. Just enough to confirm her worst fears without overwhelming her. Texts between Emma and David, a few suggestive messages, plans for hotel rooms. I didn't lay it all out at once, but it was enough. Rachel's face went pale, and I could see the heartbreak hit her like a freight train. She didn't scream or cry, though. She just sat there, staring at the screen, her hands trembling. I had a feeling something was off, she whispered. I just didn't want to believe it. I felt for her, I really did. I knew what she was going through, hell, I was going through it myself. But there was also a part of me that was cold, calculating. I needed her to be on my side for what came next. Rachel was going to be my secret weapon. And together, we were going to burn them both to the ground. I wasn't just aiming for a clean break. No, that would have been too easy. I wanted them to suffer the way I had, to feel the weight of their betrayal crush down on them like it had on me. Divorce wasn't enough. Exposing them, making sure the whole damn world saw them for what they truly were, that was my endgame. Months of preparation had led to this moment. Rachel and I had carefully planned every move, every word, every detail. We knew exactly what we were doing. Emma and David thought they were in the clear, that their little affair was still safely tucked away in the shadows. But we were about to drag it into the light, and there would be no coming back from it. It all started with our anniversary. 10 years of marriage. 10 years down the drain, and she didn't even see it coming. I suggested we take a romantic weekend getaway to reconnect. I laid it on thick, flowers, a sweet note, everything she'd want to hear. I could see the guilt in her eyes when I brought it up. She hesitated for a second, probably wondering how she was going to juggle me and David that weekend. But she agreed. How could she say no to a doting husband who wanted to rekindle the flame? Meanwhile, Rachel set things in motion on her end. She arranged for David to go on a business trip, something Emma was used to by now. It was almost too perfect. David wouldn't even think twice. We picked a hotel not too far away, one they'd be comfortable sneaking off to, as they had so many times before. The stage was set. The night of the trip, everything fell into place. Emma and I checked into the hotel, but I wasn't planning on spending a single minute there with her. Rachel and I had been keeping tabs on David and Emma, and we knew exactly where they'd end up. I made some excuse to Emma about needing to handle a work call, and I slipped out of the room. My heart was pounding, but my mind was sharp. This was it. Rachel was already waiting in the hotel lobby when I got there. We exchanged a silent nod, both of us knowing what was about to happen. We made our way to the room where David and Emma were supposed to meet, adrenaline rushing through my veins. I had the camera ready. No way were they talking their way out of this. We waited for what felt like an eternity in that hallway. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anger. From months of holding this shit in, from pretending like everything was fine while they fucked around behind our backs. And then, we saw them. Emma and David arrived separately, as they always did. First David, then Emma, slipping into the hotel room like it was their own private playground. They didn't have a clue that their whole world was about to come crashing down. Rachel and I gave them a few minutes to settle in, just enough time for them to drop their guard, to feel safe. Then, without warning, we burst into the room. The look on their faces was priceless. Emma's eyes went wide with shock, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. David froze, completely dumbfounded. They didn't even have time to cover themselves up properly. It was a perfect snapshot of their pathetic little secret life. I could see the panic wash over Emma as she realized what was happening, but it was too late. I made sure the camera caught every second. I kept my voice cold, detached, as I spoke. Surprise. I've known for a long time, Emma. I've known about all of it. She tried to stammer out some sort of excuse, but I wasn't interested. The time for lies was over. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. She couldn't even look me in the eye, and that's when I knew this was it. She knew the game was over. There was no wriggling her way out of this one. She'd been caught, and there was nothing left to say. Rachel, too, stood there silently, her expression as icy as mine. David had this ridiculous, deer-in-the-headlights look on his face, like he couldn't believe this was happening. Honestly, I think he was more worried about what Rachel would do than the fact that I was standing there recording the whole thing. I made sure to get everything on tape, every word, every reaction, every moment of their humiliation. Emma could barely speak, and when she did try to open her mouth, I cut her off with a wave of my hand. "Save it," I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "You don't get to explain anything." In that moment, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Months of anger, pain, and betrayal had led me to this point, and now that I was here, now that I had exposed them, I felt detached. I had been preparing for this for so long that when it finally happened, it was like watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. There was no screaming, no yelling, no drama. Just the cold, hard reality of what they had done, laid bare for all of us to see. Emma stood there, frozen in place, while David fumbled for words, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. But there was nothing they could say or do to change what had happened. Rachel and I walked out of that hotel room without another word. We didn't need to stay and watch them scramble for explanations or beg for forgiveness. We had what we came for, proofs. They couldn't deny it anymore. The truth was out, and there was no hiding from it. As we left, I knew that this was just the beginning. The divorce was next, and with the evidence I had, Emma didn't stand a chance. But at that moment, walking away from that hotel room, I felt like I had already won. After that night at the hotel, I knew it wouldn't be long before Emma came crawling back, trying to salvage whatever was left of her shattered life. And sure enough, a few days later, she came to me, her eyes red and swollen from crying, pleading for forgiveness. "Jack, please," she sobbed, standing in our kitchen, the place where we used to share meals, now a battlefield for the broken remains of our marriage. "It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. I still love you. We can fix this." Her words felt hollow. A mistake? A year-long affair, multiple hotels, secret trips, and a hidden bank account, that wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate betrayal. And as for love? Whatever love we had once shared had been obliterated the moment she decided to give herself to someone else. I looked at her, feeling nothing but cold detachment. "You didn't make a mistake, Emma. You made a choice. Every time you met with him, every lie you told, that was your decision. You didn't love me then, and I doubt you love me now." Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her weasel her way back into my life with apologies and crocodile tears. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about closure and consequences. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the divorce papers I had been carrying for days. The look on her face when I handed them to her was almost satisfying. Shock, disbelief, horror, it all flashed across her features in an instant. "Sign them," I said, my voice steady. "We're done." She looked down at the papers, her hands trembling. "Jack, Please, don't do this. We can work through this. I'll go to therapy, I'll do anything you want. I shook my head. There's nothing left to work through. You killed our marriage, and I'm not interested in trying to revive something that's already dead. She didn't argue anymore. She just stood there, clutching the divorce papers like they were a lifeline she couldn't grasp. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her alone with the wreckage she had created. The fallout was swift. Rachel didn't waste any time either. She filed for divorce from David the very next day. The scandal spread through our social circle like wildfire, and soon enough, everyone knew what had happened. David lost his job. Turns out, sleeping with a colleague's wife isn't exactly great for corporate reputation. As for Emma, her social standing was obliterated. Our mutual friends distanced themselves from her, and whispers about her affair followed her everywhere she went. It was almost poetic. While I had been the one left humiliated and betrayed, now it was Emma and David who were on the receiving end of public shame. Their little secret had been exposed for all to see, and there was no hiding from it. But what mattered most to me wasn't the gossip or the ruined reputations. It was my kids, Lily and Sarah. I wasn't going to let Emma drag them into this mess. I had gathered more than enough evidence to ensure that I would get full custody, and when it came time for the court hearings, that's exactly what happened. The judge didn't even blink before awarding me full custody of both of our children, citing Emma's infidelity and lack of stability. Watching Emma's face as the judge read the decision was a moment I'll never forget. She looked devastated, like everything she had fought to hold on to was slipping away. And in a way, it was. She had lost me, lost her social standing, and now she had lost the most important thing of all, our kids. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had fought my battle and won, and now it was time to move on. When it was all said and done, I stood on the other side of the storm, victorious. The divorce settlement had gone exactly as planned. I kept the family home, the place where Lily and Sarah had grown up, the place that still had the echoes of a time when life felt whole. I walked away with primary custody of my daughters, ensuring they'd stay with me, away from the chaos that Emma had caused. And Emma? She was left with scraps, a small apartment and visitation rights. Everything she thought she'd keep, she lost. It wasn't just about the money or the house, it was about the fact that she'd thrown away her family for nothing. I had spent months preparing for this, setting the stage for my victory, and it had paid off. Financially, I was secure, but more than that, I had come out on top emotionally. I didn't just survive the betrayal, I reclaimed my life from it. Every piece of evidence, every cold, calculated move, had been worth it in the end. I had made sure that I wouldn't be the one left picking up the pieces. Emma, on the other hand, struggled. After the affair became public knowledge, she was ostracized, left to face the consequences of her actions alone. David was out of the picture, his life in ruins after losing his job and his own marriage. He had been nothing more than a temporary thrill for her, a distraction from whatever emptiness she felt. And now, she had to live with that emptiness, isolated and left to figure out where she had gone wrong. It wasn't my problem anymore. I had no regrets. The pain she had caused me was real, but so was the strength I found in rebuilding my life. I focused on being a father to Lily and Sarah, making sure they knew that they were loved and protected. The time I spent with them was the most important part of my day now, and watching them grow, seeing them laugh and play, gave me the sense of purpose I thought I had lost. For the first time in a long while, I started trusting myself again. I realized that Emma's betrayal hadn't broken me, it had made me stronger. I had come out of this nightmare with my dignity intact, something Emma could never say for herself. She had been reduced to a shadow of the woman I once knew, someone desperately trying to rebuild a life she had single-handedly destroyed. In the end, my revenge wasn't about destroying her, it was about reclaiming what she had tried to take from me, my sense of self, my confidence, my future. By playing the long game, by staying patient and calculating, I didn't just win the divorce. I won my life back. I had shown Emma that her betrayal wasn't the end for me, it was the beginning of something better. I'm sharing this story not because I'm proud of what happened, but because I want others to know that you can come out the other side. Betrayal like that feels like it's going to tear you apart, but if you're smart, if you stay focused, you can rebuild. You can reclaim your life, just like I did. In the end, her downfall wasn't my victory, it was hers. Because she chose it. All I did was make sure she couldn't drag me down with her. It's been a year since everything went down, and I figured I'd give you all an update. A lot has changed in my life, and I honestly never thought I'd be in such a good place after everything that happened. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd come out of this stronger, happier, and more at peace, I probably wouldn't have believed you. First off, I've been doing well, better than I expected, to be honest. After the dust settled, I focused on rebuilding my life, and that meant putting all my energy into being the best father I can be for Lily and Sarah. They're both doing great, by the way. They've adjusted to the changes much faster than I thought they would. I think the stability of staying in the family home helped, and I've made sure they know they're loved, no matter what. Emma, as you might have guessed, isn't really part of our lives anymore. She's got her visitation rights, but the relationship between her and the girls has been strained, to say the least. I don't encourage or discourage it, I let them make their own decisions, and right now, they're not too interested in spending much time with her. I think they're still processing everything. Emma's been trying to get her life back on track, but from what I hear, it's not going too well. She's still dealing with the fallout from the affair, and it doesn't seem like she's made much progress. As for me, I've moved on. I won't lie, there were some tough days. Days where I felt the weight of everything that happened and wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. But with time, I started to heal. I've been seeing someone, actually. We've been together for a few months now, and it's been good. I won't get into too many details, but she's been a breath of fresh air in my life. There's no drama, no secrets, just honesty and support, which is exactly what I needed. Work's been steady, and I've found myself putting more focus on the future. I've been saving up, planning a few trips with the girls. We've already done one to the beach, and seeing them laugh and play in the sand without a care in the world was one of the best moments I've had in a long time. I want to give them the kind of childhood they deserve, one that isn't clouded by the mess of their parents' past. Looking back, I don't regret how everything played out. If anything, I'm grateful for it. It forced me to reevaluate my life, to focus on what really matters. Emma's betrayal hurt like hell, but it didn't define me. It gave me a chance to rebuild, to come out stronger, and to show my daughters that no matter what life throws at you, you can always rise above it. So yeah, I'm doing well. Better than I thought possible a year ago. Thanks to everyone who followed my story and offered support. It helped more than you know. If you're going through something similar, just know, it gets better. You just have to keep moving forward.